Hello and welcome back everyone. This is Attorney Mahmudul Hasan again on the EB1A series. In this part 8, we are going to cover the EB1A criteria on your authorship of scholarly articles in a professional, major trade publication or in other major media. Let's dive into the video. Let's start by understanding what the US Citizenship and Immigration Services looks for under this criterion. This criterion also has multiple components. The first thing USCIS checks is whether you have authored scholarly articles in your field. Then the second thing USCIS looks at is whether the article you authored is published in professional or major trade publications or other major media. One important note here, authorship is not limited to publishing the article. Presentations made at conferences that are recognized nationally or internationally also qualifies as authorship of scholarly articles. Now let's understand the first component. What does scholarly article mean? USCIS considers the following factors to determine whether an article is scholarly or not. First, whether the article reports on original research, experimentation, or philosophical discourse. Second, you wrote the article as an expert or researcher in your field of expertise. In other words, the article must be in your field of expertise or related to it. For example, as a lawyer, if I write something purely on biochemistry, USCIS is highly unlikely to accept it as a scholarly article in the field of my legal expertise. Similarly, if a musician writes a scholarly article on the history of music in an art journal, USCIS might still be hesitant to accept that as supportive of his extraordinary ability in music performance, unless he shows that, in addition to performing music, he has somehow developed an expertise and authority in writing about music. On the other hand, a biologist who conducts research on the effects of drug use on the human body might write an article on the psychological consequences of drug use, which could be considered as a related field of expertise, even though psychology is not his primary area of expertise. There is a misconception that to author a scholarly article, you should be affiliated with an educational or research institution. Although this is often the case, it is not necessary. A professional might write or present his professional or independent research outcomes and might qualify under this criterion. The third component USCIS looks at is whether these scholarly articles are peer-reviewed, meaning that other experts in the field have evaluated the work. Finally, USCIS also considers whether the article is written for learned persons in that field. In other words, the article targets audience who are already knowledgeable in the field, not beginners or random learners. When you write something in an academic or professional journal, USCIS generally accepts that without any question on the scholarly nature of the article. For example, Harvard Political Science Review or American Journal of Evaluation by American Evaluation Association. But when you publish something outside the academic or professional journal or in a non-traditional forum, USCIS might require you to provide information on the scholarly nature of the article and forum that we discussed in previous segment of this video. For example, you write an article for the blog of American Association of Applied Linguistics. A blog does not sound scholarly, and in that case, USCIS might require you to provide more evidence on the scholarly nature of the blog. Once USCIS determines that your article is scholarly, the next step is to determine if the publication qualifies as a professional publication, a major trade publication, or other major media. We had a similar discussion in part 5 on what qualifies as a professional publication, a major trade publication, or other major media. There is no definition of professional or major trade publications or other major media in the regulation. We can try the common definition of them to see what type of media is covered under this criterion. Professional publications, these are typically scholarly journals or magazines that focus on a specific professional audience and are often peer-reviewed. Examples include academic journals like the New England Journal of Medicine for medicine or professional magazine like Bloomberg Businessweek for finance and business. Major trade publications, these focus on news, trends, and information relevant to a particular industry or trade. These types of media might have a limited audience in that particular field, and it targets professionals and other audience who are otherwise interested in that field. Examples could include Variety for the entertainment industry or Architectural Digest for architecture. Other major media, this includes widely recognized newspapers, magazines, television channels, or online media platforms that have a broad audience and high credibility. Examples include the New York Times, BBC, and Al Jazeera. Overall factors USCIS considers include the target audience of the publication and how wide the circulation or readership is compared to other media in the field. Please note that whether the media or forum is from your home country or another country, it qualifies as a professional or major trade publication or other major media if it meets all the requirements. Also, if something is not in English, you must provide a certified translation of that media coverage. Now, besides providing a scholarly article that you published, you might need to provide the evidence on the nature of the publication or forum to show that the media or publication is recognized as professional or falls under major trade publications or other major media. When you write something in academic or professional journals, USCIS generally does not require further evidence on the nature of the publication. But for most other platforms, you have to demonstrate the publication is either a professional or major trade media or other major media. To do this, you might start by showing circulation and audience data. This includes how many people subscribe, the publication circulation numbers, or how many views it gets. For websites, you could use Google Analytics or other web traffic data to show how many people visit the site. Next, consider indexing and inclusion in databases. You should check if the publication is listed in well-known databases that recognize reputable journals and magazines like Academic Search Premier, Business Source Premier, JSTOR, or even the US Library of Congress database, which keeps a record of major media from different countries. You also should provide evidence of the peer review process used by the publication. This means explaining how articles are selected and reviewed before publication, and giving details about the editorial board, which usually includes respected experts. Another helpful thing to include information on any awards or recognitions the publication has received from notable organizations in the industry. Also, statements or letters from experts or academics that highlight the publication's importance and relevance can be very persuasive. You can further strengthen your case by including articles from the publication that focus on significant and relevant topics in your field. Next, a media kit from the publication can also be very useful. It typically contains detailed information about who reads the publication, what kind of topics they cover, and their advertising practices. Finally, you might want to compare this publication to other well-known major trade publications or professional media in the field, showing how it stands out or matches up in terms of features and prominence. Now, as we touched upon previously in this video, your presentation of scholarly work might be accepted as authorship of a scholarly article. Let's have a brief discussion on that. This broadens the scope for petitioners to demonstrate their expertise and contributions to their field, especially for those whose professions do not typically require them to write articles but to present at conferences. For example, an entrepreneur at a business conference discussing new ideas and concepts. Now, not all conferences are treated equally in this context. The USCIS specifically values presentations made at conferences that are recognized either nationally or internationally. This means the conference should be well regarded among professionals in the field. It should attract experts and scholars from across the country or around the world. These conferences typically have a rigorous selection process for presentations, ensuring that only high-quality, relevant, and original research is shared. To demonstrate that a conference is recognized nationally or internationally, petitioners might submit various documents. These could include promotional materials from the conference that highlight its scope and the diversity of its attendees. Further, you may submit the official publications, press releases, or media coverage that discuss the conference's significance and reach. Additionally, you can present the evidence of sponsorship by well-known organizations or testimonials from respected figures to show the national or international recognition of the conference. Furthermore, you may provide the list of past speakers or attendees who are recognized experts. Lastly, evidence of a rigorous peer review process for accepting presentations can further establish the conference's credibility and recognition. Let's consider some case studies to have a comprehensive understanding of this criterion. Case study 1. Dr. Anisa Raman is an environmental scientist from Bangladesh who has published several articles on climate change impacts in Bangladesh. Having been published in journals like Environmental Science Policy, he presented evidence of the journal's impact factors, the international editorial boards, and peer review process. Case study 2. Maria Eduarda is a tech entrepreneur from Brazil, known for her innovative approaches in fintech solutions. While her primary role does not involve academic writing, she has presented at multiple technology conferences, including the Web Summit. For her EB1 petition, she submitted conference brochures, a list of previous keynote speakers who are recognized industry leaders, and media coverage of the events to prove the national and international recognition of these conferences. Case study 3. Sergei Petrov is a celebrated classical musician from Russia, specializing in piano. Sergei has written several articles on the history of Russian classical music, which have been published in well-respected art magazines and major newspapers in Russia. For his EB1A petition, Sergei provided documentation showing the distribution and readership of these art magazines and newspapers, article selection process, and databases and indexes that show those magazines and newspapers as professional or major media. Case study 4. Aminata Diop is a public health advocate from Senegal who has extensively worked on improving healthcare access in West Africa. Aminata has authored multiple articles in major health policy journals discussing innovative approaches to healthcare delivery in under-resourced areas. For her EB1 petition, she included proof of the journal's international circulation and influence, such as inclusion in global health database indexes and evidence of her articles being used as references in international health policy discussions. She also presented endorsements from health experts worldwide, attesting to her articles' impact on global health strategies. In part 8 of our EB1A series, we delved into the criterion of authorship of scholarly articles in professional, major trade publications or other major media. We discussed that scholarly articles should report on original research and be authored by experts in their respective fields. We also highlighted that presentations at nationally or internationally recognized conferences also could meet this criterion.
We end our discussion on the authorship of scholarly articles in a professional, major trade publication, or other major media. Please leave your comments or questions in the comment box. Follow us for more on the US immigration. Thank you very much for watching this.